Okay, guys, so I'm going to give a quick overview of what we're talking about today. And I think the biggest thing is looking at honeybees now as livestock, just like we do other species like sheep, goats, cows, and what role you are all going to be playing as veterinarians in honeybee health. I'm hoping in the next 50 minutes to make you a bee expert, but I definitely have a good news, bad news. I can't teach you everything there is to know about honeybee diseases in an hour. I wish I could. I'm going to try really hard. But I can teach you what you need to know as a veterinarian, where to go, who to talk to, and what resources to use so that you can look like you're an expert to your beekeepers or your clients that you're seeing. And then some fun queen spotting. If any of you have been in hives before, that might be easy for you, but those of you that haven't will be kind of fun to do. So how many have been beekeeping or have hives or have families with hives, just so I can get an idea? Don't be embarrassed. Okay, all right, so the rest of you, and no experience at all, or like 20 plus years? Okay, great. So that's where I started. I had no experience at all. I had not been in a hive, so it doesn't matter how much experience you have. You can do it all as a veterinarian. So I use this slide. This was actually in Michigan. We had a really cool class that was a summer-long bee school, and this is actually how I started out. And I just think it's important to kind of look at this because this is how an apiary is set up, lots of different ways to do it. But when you look at this in perspective, when we're talking about sheep, cows, goats, they're really just individual animals. The hive is housing the colony of bees, but as a colony, you can think of it as an individual animal. And I want you to kind of start thinking about honeybees like this because this is how we are treating them as veterinarians. And so just another perspective, you've got a row of hives here, but potentially a bunch of sheep in a flock. So this is the big question, I think, that if anybody, I know in all your free time in vet school, you're not probably reading the news, but honeybees and the actual food security or the lack thereof is a huge thing in the national news worldwide because we are looking at honeybees as the red canary, so to speak. We don't even know how bad the problem is in our native pollinators, but we know it's a huge problem. And we can track honeybees to show that, but the effect that's happening subsequently at the same time in the native bee population is really unknown. And that can be across the spectrum. Bumblebees, there's a lot of them are endangered now and are at risk of being extinct. And that's really the more the native side, but honeybees are really the sentinel marker that we can track to know that there's a huge problem. And I use this example. This is some data that we looked at. The Bee Informed project actually just stopped this past year, but it was like a citizen science project. So beekeepers could elect to be in this program and you would report your mortality. And so on this slide, the biggest thing to look at is the red. That's the overall annual mortality. There's like a spring and a winter here, but overall, even when we look at hobbyists, like the backyard beekeepers, sideliners usually have about 100 or 200, and then commercial is 250 or more. All of these groups are seeing a mortality of about 40 to 50% of their bees are dying every year. That's a huge problem. And when we look at it in perspective of other livestock, if we have this issue, let's say, for example, the African swine fever, or kind of more recently looking at this is all over the news. These type of outbreaks you can see worldwide. Everybody's talking about it in the news. Not a lot of people are talking about what's happening in the honeybee population. And so just something to kind of think about in the back of your mind when we talk about honeybees, because the biggest thing for us is they are the sentinel for environmental health. So when we look at us as veterinarians, we're on the animal side of health, and you've heard this whole One Health theory, where we have animal health, human health. A lot of people forget about the environmental health. And environmental health is really, again, where the honeybee is the yellow canary, showing us that there's a problem, but nobody's really been addressing it yet. And so what is the problem? I think the biggest thing is we have started to domesticate honeybees. And that is one problem that we are seeing, that we have created this, I guess, wild or feral insect, and we have really kind of started to domesticate them. People talk about the native pollinator threat. There isn't really any research to support that the honeybees are destroying the native pollinators. So you can kind of think of both of them, these pollinators in conjunction, kind of coexisting together, but we are able to see the honeybees as a problem declining. and we know the native bees are as well. Honeybees aren't causing it, but honeybees and native bees are all being exposed to the same things. And so subsequently, they're both declining. And so over the next probably 40 minutes now, I'm going to try to teach you how to be a honeybee expert. Veterinarians, as you guys probably know, we've all become the experts on every species, right? Like we're meant to or expected to know everything there is to know about horses, cows, sheep, cats, dogs, and now honeybees. And that can be very daunting, especially as a veterinary student. But what you need to focus on, and the biggest thing to learn, is where to go to get that information. So a lot of the myths are you have to own bees to be a honeybee medicine, a veterinarian with honeybee medicine background. You have to know bees, and you have to know every bee disease. And those are all just not true. What we do need to know, though, is how to speak the language when we're working with other beekeepers. And so that is on the hobby level, sideliner, or commercial level, we need to know what we're talking about. So my first quiz for you guys is it honeybee one word or two words? Does anybody know the answer to that? It's two words, yeah. So you might catch if I've made a mistake, let me know in my slides. But in theory, if you talk to any entomologist, which they're going to be the know-how in this situation, it truly is actually two words. Same thing with bumblebee. And so when you're talking about this or writing, try to make sure that you're using the right language for that as well. And then kind of knowing where honeybees fit. I'm not going to quiz you guys, but this is kind of the breakdown of the kingdom, phylum, class, etc. And then the scientific name is something I would try to remember. That's Apis mellifera, and that means honey and to bear. The bigger thing, and I think this is one of my pet peeves, and I know as veterinary students you should all know this, but I can't tell you how many people don't know this, is the difference between honeybees and wasp or yellow jackets. And so I teach this to my 4-H kids, but good bees, I tell them, are brown and fuzzy. So those are the bumblebees. A mason bee is a good example of a native bee. And then the honeybees are nice brown and fuzzy. The bad bugs, or sometimes you could nickname these guys something else, but they're black and yellow. And so these are the ones that everybody talks about, though, when you're talking to the public, because these are the ones that are at the apple orchards stinging people, right? They're on the apples and the cider and donuts and everything in the springtime. And so these are the ones that people are like, oh, and they'll mislabel them as honeybees. So just remember to correct people that the honeybees are not going to be there for stinging. The biggest thing to think about, though, when you're speaking the language is when you get to the hives or you get to the apiary and you're talking to the client. And that is beekeeping terminology 101. It can be very daunting when you first start out. So my recommendation, there's a lot of them online, but Better Bee has a whole entire glossary that you can go and look and see what everything means. From things like parts of the hive, the Langstroth hives are the most common ones. And those are these kind of boxes. They're almost more rectangle. That's a Langstroth hive, that's the most common. But people start throwing lingo out like medium boxes and deep boxes and nukes and packages of bees. And you're like, what does all this mean? That's where it's helpful to not only work with a beekeeper, but also do a little bit of research and know what we're talking about. Especially when it comes to the food for bees, people mislabel this as well. So pollen versus nectar, and we'll have some pictures of that. And then nectar becomes honey once they basically dehydrate it out and remove some of the water. Pollen actually becomes bee bread, which is basically the fermented version of pollen. And that's how the honeybees are going to keep it or store it in their hive. So those are the two main sources of feed, and that's really all you kind of need to know as far as food source terminology goes. And then most importantly, what are the honeybees? Has anybody seen a queen versus a drone versus a worker bee? I think you guys probably went over that in the first lecture. So then it should be no surprise then that that is what everybody looks like. You don't always necessarily have to see the queen when we go into the hive, but it's important to know what the queen looks like. The drones have the really big googly eyes and they're a little bit bigger. And the worker bees, of course, sorry, males, but they're all females. And that just seems to fit with the workers in the hive, but they are literally all females. The drones actually are only in the hive and are ramped up during breeding season. And then the drones are actually kicked out in the winter and are not allowed to overwinter in the hive. So they get sacrificed in the winter. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that. The worker bees literally drag the males out and they kick them out and they succumb. And the females overwinter for about 6 months. All right, so this is your first quiz. Can any of you guys see where the queen is? This one's actually hard. I kind of started with a hard one. All right, so these are my favorite queens. I like to call these the tiger queens, so you can see they're darker, which means they're actually harder to spot usually. But you can see she's got that nice long abdomen, and she has a little bit larger kind of hairless area in the mid-body. All right, this is the most important slide, but we're going to go through each of these individually. These are the resources that you need to be a honeybee expert. Once you have these, you don't need me. You'll have all the answers. So textbooks and publications, there are a few out, and so we're going to talk about the most important ones. Extension and university websites, I'll go through some of the ones that I am familiar with. There's a few organizations that you should be aware of, especially if you want to go into honeybee medicine, to become members of them as students now if you're not already, and then stay in the know through there. And then mentors. And sometimes I kind of feel like I should put mentors first, because you don't have to own bees to do honeybee medicine, but you need to get comfortable working with bees. And the only way to do that is usually to work with somebody alongside them. But Craig's going to get bees, so you guys will have that covered. So textbooks, these are the main two textbooks. And the one on the left is actually written by a friend and colleague of mine, Terry Kane. She's actually in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so they wrote this first publication in 2021. And I will be helping in the 2027 book chapters that will be coming out in a couple of years. But it's really kind of cool that this book is still relatively new when we think about textbooks. And they're already writing the next, we've just started writing the next book. So that'll be out in 2027. And the one on the right, also a very useful book about honeybee veterinary medicine. I would say the left one is a little bit more clinical. The right one's a little bit more scientific, but both nice to have on the shelf. I couldn't find the date on when this was published, but this is one that Michigan State still recommends as kind of a field guide. But you guys all have your iPhones now and Android phones, and you really probably don't even need a paper book. You can just get on some of the resources I'm going to give you today, and you can look online. But if you want a paper book, you can use these ones. I have a delay in these slides. There we go. Okay. There's also some really great publications out there. If any of you are familiar with the North American Veterinary Clinic series, there's an entire one that was just published, I think in 2021, on honeybee veterinary medicine. And I just put the table of contents there just to kind of show you guys how comprehensive it is. There's quite a bit of information in there. And then the last one I have for you, which was just published in 2024, so just in January, is one out of the Honeybee Health Coalition, something I'll be talking to you guys about as well as one of the organizations or websites to look at. They have an entire PDF on honeybee nutrition and talking about guide to supplementing feed for these honeybees. So the second thing is using your university and extension websites, and yours is actually prettier than MSU's, so I put yours first. This is your honeybee website. And it's got some great tools over here. If you toggle through these, it talks about everybody in the program, upcoming events. There's actually even a job opportunity. If any of you have honeybee experience, you can work their hives. Might be a good summer job. But this is a great tool resource of your bee experts. Oh, I don't know why my slides are out of order, but that's okay. Podcasts are another great tool. I put this in here in the extension and university side of things because you guys can see this one is actually run by University of Florida. And so these podcasts, if they're coming from a great source of information like an extension or a university, I think they're really great tools, especially for vet students that are on the go and you might be commuting or working out or whatever, and you've got your podcast on your headphones and you can listen in all your free time between studying. This is a shameless plug for goats because I know some of you are ag. We had our podcast just released a couple of weeks ago. So we have one out on sheep and goats on the top 3 diseases that we see in them. So if you guys want to listen to that one too, in all your free time exercising. All right, next queen spotting. Let's try to keep you guys awake during lunch hour. This one I think is a little bit easier. Yeah, you guys are seeing it. So she's down here in the lower corner. I still, I've been beekeeping since 2016, and I still get excited when I see queens. I don't know, it's just fun when I can spot them. And the client of the hives that you're looking at, usually they get pretty excited too. Okay, this was actually the next slide that was supposed to be on there, which is the honeybee experts. So these are some of your go-to people at Washington State that you could link up with, get more information. I know some of you probably already know them if you've just recently started the bee club, but these are your go-to people. And then for us at Michigan State, I put this in here not because you guys are in Michigan, but this The tools on this website are fully available to you as well, right? So these are other great resources, and Michigan State is definitely one of the other lead universities that is doing pollinator initiative work, and really kind of one of the most up-to-date websites. It is a little bit overwhelming and daunting, I'll be very honest with you, but they have some great tools now, and this one actually, let me see if I can get this to work. The diagnostic tools for honeybee medicine on the left here, when you click this link, it will take you to an entire resource that was just launched in the past couple months with like 3 or 4 different universities and some USDA funding. And there's a great tool there with lots and lots of pictures. And I'm definitely a picture person, so that it's helpful when you're looking for disease identification. And then these are our experts in Michigan. And when I became a beekeeper in 2016, the VFD, which is the Veterinary Feed Directive, are you guys all familiar with that terminology already? Okay. So that's where veterinarians became really important in honeybee medicine initially, because they were going to need us for VFDs or antibiotic use in the feed. And so in 2016, I became the beekeeper and instantly famous because I was a veterinarian beekeeping. And that actually helped me get a lot of connections with these individuals. And these people are still people I call or text if I have a hive issue, I can't figure it out, I use my bee experts. So Dr. Megan Milbrath is in the entomology department. And then Anna Heck came on a couple years later, and she works in the MSU Extension Division, and they run the honeybee pollinator program at Michigan State. And they do some awesome stuff. They have a 3-week rotation for vet students as well, which I would assume you could probably do that as an extern. I don't see why not. And they go through 3 weeks of a pretty intensive honeybee medicine rotation. And so that's a fun thing to do. All right. I think I only have one more, but they seem to all be. Do you guys see this one? This one's a much larger abdomen as well. So the queen's right there. All right, extension websites. This one actually is closed. This is the citizen science project I was talking to you guys about, where beekeepers could get involved. But I put it up here because there's actually, if you go to the user dashboard, there's still some really nice handouts in here, and they've kept this website up and maintained it. And I don't know where this program is going, to be honest, but they have put it on hold for the past year. And I just know that through the grapevine and talking to Michigan State, but it's on hold for right now. I think maybe because of most things, funding. But there's still some really great educational materials on this website. Can you tell I don't have patience? It's not. Oh man, it says Microsoft PowerPoint has stopped working. There we go. Restart program? That doesn't sound like something I want to do. I just want to keep going. Oh man. No, it just totally restarted the PowerPoint program. So hold please. I mean, I have to restart PowerPoint. Hold on. I think if I just go to, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. So do I just do, where's your start? Yay! Wait for it. All right, we're back in business. I love when technology tries to sabotage us. Okay. This is the MSU website I was talking to you guys about. So if you go to the MSU website, or you even type in the word beesneedvets.com, it'll take you right to this. I know it doesn't look fancy, but if you toggle through all of these are diagnostic tools for honeybee diseases. And so you can actually go through this. You can work through them if you want, if you have time in your free time and you want to go through all the diseases, or you can go right to each disease. And then there's photos and videos, and it talks to you about what the best diagnostic tool is to use to diagnose it, some common pitfalls if you're trying to diagnose it and compare it. So it's just a really great resource that is online that you can use to know your bee diseases. And this is the contributors to this. So I just wanted to highlight, these are the people that put this together. But MSU is the, I guess, lead person that is overseeing the program from their website. And one of the last extension websites I would talk to you guys about is the Honeybee Health Coalition. Has anybody heard of this? Okay, so this one is really great when we talk about varroa mite. Does anybody know what varroa mite is? It's the major killer of honeybees right now. And this tool is great because it does have another thing where you can toggle through and you can talk about what time of year it is, what is the mite count that you're seeing in the hive, is there a honey super on, is there a nectar flow, what are we doing with this hive, are we harvesting the honey, and that will help you decide what to put on the hive, if it needs a mite treatment, and if so, what to use. And then it gives you some information about those tools. So here's a nice, like, do I even have to treat? So there's a threshold treatment table in there to talk about whether we even need to treat. And then it talks about here's your options for treatment. And you can click on each of those yellow boxes to determine, okay, what is Mite Away quick strips? What do I need to be worried about? And so it's kind of a Cliff Note version to explain to clients, like, Mite Away strips you need to put in at a certain temperature or it'll kill your bees and potentially your queen. So you can't use it at every temperature. And if you're in the middle of the summer, you may be limited. And so it will highlight all that stuff for you. And it takes a couple minutes to go through the questions. And then one of the last ones, and I think one of the ones that's most important for you guys as veterinary students, is honeybee vet organization called the Veterinary Consortium. So there's a student version of this. You guys probably have heard of this, but I wanted to highlight a couple things on this website that you may not be aware of. And one of them is obviously join as a student. There is there's a Find a Bee Vet part of the website, and then there's the Honeybee Vet Consortium certification program. And the certification program is actually going to be rolled out in the next 2 or 3 months. They're still working on it, but that is going to be a tool that you can, as a veterinary student or as a veterinarian, you can go on, you can sign up for the program. I think it's going to be, don't quote me, I think it's like 200, 250. So a pretty reasonable program for 150 CE hours. I think a lot of it's going to be online CE hours, but there will be some in-person things that are available as well. And then you get this certification saying that you're a fancy honeybee vet. But I think it's really going to help, because one of the problems that we were seeing 5, 6 years ago when we were talking about this, all these honeybee commercial beekeepers and hobby beekeepers that need veterinarians, but then there's no veterinarians that were comfortable to go out to the hives. And then we had to figure out, how do we do this so that it was streamlined and everybody was getting pretty similar education. And so it's taken a while, like most things, to get there, but that's going to be this program that's coming out. And you don't have to do that program, but definitely something that would be worthwhile, especially if you want to have this as a side business. So these are the mentors that you'd be looking for. Where do I find my mentors? Local beekeepers, obviously. If you have the opportunity to work with a commercial beekeeper, I would definitely do that. If you can imagine, just like in clinics, right? The more you see of a disease, the easier it's going to be to ingrain in your mind. So if you have a commercial beekeeper with 250 hives that you're working throughout the summer versus maybe a hobbyist with 2 hives, you're going to see disease a lot more commonly, most likely, and that will help you to recognize normal versus abnormal, which is really the big thing. State, regional, and local bee clubs. I'll highlight the website that I found that I would probably recommend you guys go to if you are not aware of your local bee club. And then honeybee veterinarians and specialists. So that's Find a Bee Vet and Become a Bee Vet specialist with the certificate program. So this is the Washington State Beekeepers Association website. It looks very nice and tidy, and there's a lot of information on here as well. But if you go to the local organizations, my little thing doesn't really want to cooperate with me. Anyway, if you go to the local organizations, there is a whole list based on region of your state that you can click on if you're interested in doing that. And that by far definitely helped me get started, because I just became a member of the Southeast Michigan Beekeepers Association. And then that was kind of my in with all of the other beekeepers to figure out kind of what's going on, what's happening in our state. And so I'd recommend looking into that, especially if you want to do honeybee medicine. And then this one, this is the certification program. So I wish there was the website. If you click on it right now, it says more to come. So it's not ready yet. But if you join this organization and you're on their listserv for newsletters, you'll get it. Most likely will be in the next newsletter. And then if you didn't have enough continuing education with vet school right now, there's some really cool things that are coming down the line this year, looking at pollinators. So there's this really cool excursions that are going to be happening at the AVMA convention. So there's going to be this bat cruise that they're going to be taking veterinarians and vet students, if you want, on this bat cruise, which, I mean, in all my free time, I wish I could go to that. Because obviously bats, as you can imagine, is one of our pollinators. And then there's a bee excursion as well, where they're taking them to a botanical garden in Texas, and they're going to be doing some wildlife, I'm assuming kind of bumblebee stuff as well. So that's kind of cool that at our major conferences, there's now highlights for these pollinators. And then back to the Honeybee Vet Consortium, there's a virtual conference. So for you guys, that might be of interest because you don't have to travel as a student, but that is going to be in September, and it's a 2-day conference, and it's all virtual. So definitely something to sign up. And I'm almost positive students either are free or they get a discount. So you could keep that in mind if you want to explore more of the honeybee. And then one of the other reasons to kind of link up with your state bee association is you can kind of coming down the line see what's happening. So like I just pulled this one from Michigan State. If you really want to nerd out, you can go to the Insect Science Symposium, which actually the entomologists and everybody in the bee program will be there. And this is in May. So just kind of things to watch out for even as vet students, because even though you don't think you have a lot of time right now, you might have more time right now as a vet student than you're going to have when you get into graduation and as a clinician. So if you have the time now, definitely go and do some of these things. I was sad to see when I went to the Find a Bee Vet, there weren't any in Washington. So can you guys work on that? Because I even looked at Idaho thinking like, I'm gonna have you guys drive a couple hours to find a bee vet. And there weren't any in neighboring states either. So you're just gonna have to come to Michigan. But you can see even the Michigan map is kind of sad right now as well. There's like 5 of us. And I had to change my company name so that it included NBs too. But there are bee vets, and this group of veterinarians that are seeing honeybees, it's getting larger. And so if you are on, this is right straight from the Honeybee Vet Consortium, like as we're getting these updated, people are adding themselves. We now have like a national meeting that I just missed, but it was this weekend because I was writing my talks for this weekend. But on the national level, all the veterinarians that are interested in honeybee medicine get on a Zoom chat, and it's like every 3 months or 4 months now. And that was all led by Megan Milbrath and the Michigan group. So just some things to think about. If you are staying in the loop on these and staying on the email listservs, you'll be alerted to when things are happening. But I would really like to have some more bee veterinarians. So Craig will be becoming one. So then you guys can mentor him. He's going to start with 2 hives because I told him you can't have just one. It's just like any other livestock. You have to have at least 2. But just some good information. And then that is it for my talk. And I wanted to open it up for you guys to have specific questions, and I can try to answer them as best as possible. But my hope is to not make you a bee expert in 1 hour, but give you all of these resources, which I know can seem kind of overwhelming, but hopefully you can go back to this talk and be like, oh yeah, that website, that has this information. And that way you can know where to go to get the answers. Because I graduated in 2006. And I'm still not an expert on everything. You're never going to be an expert on everything, but I know who to go to when I have a cow question. I just ask Craig. You know, like there's definitely, you got to know the people that are in your team and who to go to ask for advice and what resources are trusted resources rather than just Googling randomly, right? So these are all your trusted resources. And honestly, all of them are in the past 5 years. So it's all brand new information that has been put out there. To give you guys more tools in your toolbox.